promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Bamako, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. This is NEWSLINK. Let's begin with our top stories. A civil society group in Senegal raises concern of rights and freedom suppression ahead of the country's presidential election in 2024. The Burkinabe government declares late revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara a national hero.
The father of the Burkinabe revolution is still unanimously recognized today as an outstanding figure in the history of Burkina Faso.
The United Nations expresses concern over potential violence in Liberia's upcoming general elections on October 10. And Nigeria's Center for Disease Control and Prevention, NCDC, proposed a set of health measures as the country grapples with outbreak of diphtheria.
Most of the cases, about a third of all confirmed cases, are in the age group 5 to 9 years old, and this is also closely followed by those that are 10 to 14 years. And then we have adults that are 20 and above.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with NEWSLINK.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Liberia and Ghana. We begin in Senegal as a civil society group, Forum Civil, raises alarm over the condition of public rights and freedoms within the country. The platform criticizes the increase in restrictions on peaceful protests and also shares its perspectives on the handling of the electoral process. These concerns come against the backdrop of a somewhat tense socio-political environment as Senegal approaches the upcoming presidential election scheduled for next February. Similar calls have been made by several CSOs lately for the release of political prisoners. Over in Burkina Faso, the late revolutionary leader, Captain Thomas Sankara, is now a national hero. The decision taken last Wednesday at the Council of Ministers confers on him the right to a day of homage in his memory, the creation of a monument, and the naming of streets, avenues, and public buildings. The declaration has been welcomed by the International Committee of the Memorial that bears his name. Francis Boniface has put this report by WADR's Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba.
Thomas Sankara is now a national hero. In taking this decision last Wednesday, the Burkina Faso government is implementing a law adopted in June of 2022. The title confers on the leader of the Burkinabe revolution the right to a day of homage, the creation of monuments, and the naming of streets, avenues, and public buildings in his name. Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo is the spokesperson for the government.
The father of the Burkinabe revolution is still unanimously recognized today as an outstanding figure in the history of Burkina Faso, and his ideals continue to resonate with all the young people of Burkina Faso, Africa, and even beyond the African continent.
According to the law establishing the status of the national hero, this title is awarded to any person who distinguishes himself for his actions in favor of the Burkinabe state. The decision was welcomed by the International Committee of the Thomas Sankara Memorial, which described it as a historic act that contributes to the rehabilitation of the memory of this illustrious predecessor. Luc Damiba is the Secretary General of the committee.
This is the culmination of many years of effort, with several actors now making Sankara a national hero. It gets beyond the family level, it gets beyond the militant level, it gets beyond the partisan level.
Damiba also points out that the process began under President Roch Kabore and was finally completed under Captain Ibrahim Traore. This consecration of Thomas Sankara as a hero of the nation has also been held by the local population.
A report by WADR's Martin Kaba in Ouagadougou and voiced in our studios by Francis Boniface. Now still in Burkina Faso, the government has announced the immediate suspension of 11 military personnel, including 8 officers. This decision disclosed on Thursday by the Ministry of Defense gave no further details but follows the government's declaration last Wednesday that it successfully thwarted a coup attempt. Meanwhile, Ali Mahamat Lamine Zain, the interim Prime Minister of Niger, is visiting Mali During his short stay, he engaged in discussions with both his Malian counterparts, Shogel Kokala Maiga, and the president of the transition, Colonel Assimi Goïta. The talks are centered on matters of economic collaboration, security, and energy cooperation. Sankule Janko has put this report by WEDR's Bamako correspondent Ali Cham.
Ali Mohamed Lamine Zain was warmly received as he disembarked from the plane by Malian Prime Minister Chogol Maiga. Subsequently, the two leaders proceeded to the Prime Minister's office where they engaged in a productive working session. During their meeting, the primary topic of conversation revolved around Algeria's role as a mediator between Niamey and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Algiers currently fulfills a similar mediating role between Bamako and former rebel groups. They also discussed the plans to enhance cooperation in the domains of security, economics, and energy between their respective nations. Before departing for Ouagadougou later in the evening, Prime Minister Ali Mohamed Lamine Zain of Niger paid a visit to Colonel Assimi Goïta, the president of the transition. At the diplomatic meeting, discussions centered on the establishment of a comprehensive joint commission that would foster cooperation between the two countries.
Sankule Janko with that report by Ali Cham in Bamako. And in Niamey, the French government has officially initiated the withdrawal of its deployed soldiers in the country. A statement released by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs outlines the objective of ensuring the repatriation of all French troops back to France by the end of the year. The statement underscores the critical importance of close coordination with the Nigerian armed forces to ensure the smooth execution of this evacuation process. As inquiries into the rationale behind the French government's decision arise, particularly in light of its earlier refusal to acknowledge the legitimacy of the military authorities, experts in international relations assert that adherence to the principles of the Vienna Convention leaves no alternative but for France to abide by this course of action. Morgan Asoga is a regional expert.
This is just the logic move that should be conducted as far as international relations are concerned when it comes to the Vienna Convention. When an expression of persona non grata or a denunciation of any kind of military cooperation, the normal thing to do is for the other party that is being denounced or declared persona non grata to move out. So conducting. But this logic move also comes in to materialize the separation in terms of military cooperation and even high-level diplomatic ties between France and Niger. And Niger being the last quite impressive Sahel country in which France had some strong interest. This all goes in line with this policy that is being developed by the country that has to do with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Chad remains now the only strong position of France, but the question is for how long?
Right. So what do you think informed the French government's decision to withdraw its troops from Niger, especially when it refused to do that earlier on?
To draw the attention on the fact that the legitimacy is not what should be at stake here, but rather the legal aspect of the current leadership in Niger. But France has come to acknowledge that there is a de facto leadership. So based on that factual situation, it is just clear and understandable that France, at the end of the day, decides to move out according to the de facto regime that will definitely end up being the Ure regime.
That was Morgan Asogba, a regional security expert.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NewsLink continues.
In Guinea, the trial concerning alleged embezzlement of funds by Amadou Damaru Kamara, the former president of the National Assembly during former President's tenure, Alpha Condé, has faced yet another postponement. Sandon Almendi brings more details.
The trial of the former chief parliamentarian resumed on Thursday after 2 months of judicial recess, but was postponed until next week due to the absence of one of the state lawyers. The court will open according to a statement on October 9, 2023. Santiba Kouyaté, the attorney representing the former president of the Guinean parliament, Amadou Damaru Kamara, assured the court that his client, who had previously been unable to testify due to health issues, was now ready to respond to the court's inquiries. Kouyaté made it clear that his client had no intention of avoiding justice. Damaru Kamara, who faces charges of embezzlement of public funds, illicit enrichment, and money laundering, has been in custody since April 27, 2022. He has been summoned multiple times by the Court for the Repression of Economy and Financial Crimes, but has consistently cited health reasons for his non-appearance. Recall the Guinean interim president, Colonel Mamadi Doumbia, vowed after the ousting of President Alpha Condé to fight against corruption. Doumbia's campaign has, however, been questioned lately by several political actors and groups who alleged a systemic attack on them.
San Donald Mendy with that report. And just before the break, the United Nations has voiced apprehension regarding the potential for violence both during and after the electoral process in Liberia. The global organization issued a call to all parties engaged in election proceedings, urging them to refrain from promoting hate speeches or insightful statements capable of breeding violence among the population. Ahead of the October 10 presidential and legislative elections, the National Elections Commission (NEC) says it has registered over 2.4 million eligible voters. Ogebirika reports.
In a press release issued on Thursday, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights expressed deep concern regarding reports of violence that have erupted during the ongoing election campaign. On September 29, fatal clashes unfolded between supporters of the ruling party and those of the main opposition party in Bofako. The spokesperson for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights confirmed that the toll included a minimum of 2 fatalities and 20 individuals wounded. Additionally, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights reported incidents of violence in 3 other towns within the country, which included attacks on journalists. The organization also noted the use of language that could be construed as hate speech. In light of these distressing instances of violence, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights is urging the Liberian government to initiate a comprehensive and impartial investigation. Furthermore, the UN body calls upon all stakeholders involved in the electoral process to prioritize the preservation of social harmony in the country. It's worth noting that last April, the major political parties committed to maintaining social peace by prohibiting violence in the political arena. Liberia has previously endured 2 civil wars from 1989 to 2003, resulting in the tragic loss of over 250,000 lives.
Ogebirika filed that report. You are listening to NewsLink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal on 94.9 FM. Here's a reminder of our top stories. A civil society group in Senegal raises concern over rights and freedoms suppression ahead of the country's presidential election in 2024. The Burkinabe government declares late revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara a national hero. The United Nations expresses concern over potential violence in Liberia's upcoming general elections on October 10. Still ahead in the news, Nigeria's Center for Disease Control and Prevention proposed sets of health measures as the country grapples with outbreak of diphtheria. We also have a segment, Liberia Countdown and Sports Update. Stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio.
Remember, we are streaming live on wadr.org and on YouTube, WADR News. Now, Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has charged members of the Commonwealth countries to contribute effortlessly in their resolve to the myriad of grave issues which include environmental, financial, and security. According to him, these issues are currently having negative impacts on the lives of people across the world, especially those in developing countries. He also charged members of the Commonwealth to uphold the principles of the Borders Charter to attain the protection of human rights and the observance of the rule of law.
Humanity today is struggling to live in harmony with nature. The undeniable truth is that our planet is undergoing unprecedented environmental degradation in the wake of climate change. Issues of environmental pollution, desertification, deforestation, global warming, flooding, and other forms of degradation and their adverse consequences continue to pose imminent threats to the very survival of the human race. Efforts by the Committee of Nations in search of common solutions to climate change have resulted in several measures, including promotion of renewable energy, strengthening of environmental regulations, and fostering international collaboration. Global advocacy towards transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy resources such as solar, wind, hydroelectric, and nuclear power has been phenomenal. The clarion call is for member countries to invest in renewable energy infrastructure, provide incentives for clean energy production, and set renewable energy targets to reduce carbon emissions and combat climate change, and also make our economies competitive. There's also the call to strengthen environmental regulation. Your distinct roles as members of parliaments of the Commonwealth will require you to enact requisite legislation and provide for the enforcement of robust environmental regulations to protect natural resources, reduce pollution, and promote sustainable practices.
President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana speaking there. The federal government of Nigeria is proposing a series of health measures, including the use of face masks, as states suffer the outbreak of diphtheria. As of Thursday, the country has recorded more than 8,000 cases in people between the ages of 1 and 14 years old. The high contagious vaccine-preventable disease that spreads mainly by direct contact or through the air via respiratory droplets of an infected person began a heavy presence since late last year. While people of all age groups can be affected, unvaccinated children are at most risk. The government on Thursday held a press briefing to announce a joint diphtheria emergency task force which has the mandate to deal with the outbreak. The National Center for Disease Control and Prevention, NCDC, is proposing the reinforcement of face masks in public places. Dr. Ifedayo identifies Director General of NCDC.
Interestingly, we have not had that many cases in infants. Infants represent less than 1% of the cases, and this, I think, just tells us that in the more recent times, infants with all of the efforts to strengthen routine immunization and all of that still have some protection. Most of the cases, about a third of all confirmed cases, are in the age group 5 to 9 years old, and this is also closely followed by those that are 10 to 14 years. And then we have adults that are 20 and above. We recognize that because of challenges of either access or late presentation or inadequate bed spaces or dedicated treatment centers for cases, some states are still witnessing higher than expected fatalities among reporting cases, and we are working very hard to address those. If you've got symptoms that are suggestive of diphtheria, in those states, you go to the treatment center to be investigated. This is not like COVID, where we have testing centers everywhere. If you have symptoms suggestive of diphtheria in any part of the country at the moment, please go to your general hospital.
This is the countdown to the general elections in Liberia. The countdown.
We head back to Liberia, where tensions are high following pockets of reported violence and fighting between supporters of the ruling and major opposition camps ahead of the October 10 presidential and legislative elections. WEDR's Monrovia correspondent Darlington Pop visited Kakata, Magibi County, where he spoke to some Liberians.
Kakata is located in Magibi, about 1 hour 30 minutes drive away from Monrovia. Today, we have...
I'm Peter F. there. I'm Cooper S. Flomo.
And
my name is Jones Milton.
We started the conversation with Peter Tingbe, who is hopeful that the peace of the country will be maintained.
For me, I'm not afraid. For my observation and my analysis, I had a hope and a belief that the election will be a successful election. Reason being, some Liberians, their thinking is negative, not positive. Because elections process is going on, what you have to do, when that time reaches, you go and cast your vote, you live in that safety. But some people, they are very arrogant and they want to go and make argument and lie. You'll be hurt and you may receive death from them. So what you have to do, my advice to a Liberian, to my fellow brothers and sisters, time to go and cast your vote, just walk politely and cast your vote and just return home. That's all. Likely because I've seen some people say leave for in town, going up into it because of the fear. Yeah, other people, they are thinking that mentality of thinking a lot different. So other people buying rice and other people leaving from in town, going up into it because they fear.
For the rest of the discussions, people are afraid that there could be a potential conflict.
No matter what red trace people have carrying around here and there, for me, it hadn't moved me because I know no matter what happens, Liberia will remain peaceful. Because half of the time, if you listen to this media, you will hear all type of information about this person. These are fear that they're trying to create for the Liberian people to live in fear. But we know by the grace of God, this country will remain peaceful because we need peace in this nation and nothing will carry us back.
I've been observing, even we are afraid because all the women that are coming on and which the Liberians will not be good for us. We want for the election, is whosoever win the election, it should be going to them.
Why do you think people are a bit afraid?
Because all the statements are going on. People say, election, anybody rig election, so thing will happen, and we are afraid. We don't want to go back where we came from before.
So do you think those insightful comments now making Liberians to panic?
So we are afraid. We don't want it happen now. We want for 20 or 2 or 10 elections to be peace.
They also have these messages for politicians ahead of the polls.
My advice to the candidates, they have to advise their friends and their colleagues that don't want to vote for them. They need to have area to counsel them, how to catch their vote, how to vote peacefully, politely. That will be a fault, no argument. When you leave, go and catch your vote.
What I want to say to those politicians that carry on misinformation about this nation that will cause problem in this nation. If you say you are a true Liberian and you are seeking for power, the best thing to do in Liberia is to carry the true message to the people that will keep peace in this nation, not to disorganize this country.
Because even Baba the rest, anything happen, well, I carry the rest. So if better get the cash, it be with me. And then I move my cash. But we pray that nothing will happen in the country. So for me, that's my observation.
If Liberia is to remain peaceful, who do you think bear the greatest responsibility here? Is it ordinary Liberians, the politicians, or the National Elections Commission?
We are Liberian because if we go the wrong way, definitely want to suffer.
In conclusion, they appeal to the media to be more professional and avoid using their platform to propagate hate speech.
Because they there to get information. So if you are supporting any politician, how will you get the information to the Liberian? Then you'll be giving false information. And we can really observe it. There are some information can come out, it can be false. Because they are supporting one group of people. And a millionaires will do that at all.
Those journalists carry on information that will make the Liberian to be afraid to keep by themselves or be running up and down this country. I'm trying to tell them that they should stop those type of habits because it will not help us to build this nation. Because there are so many misleading information that media journalists are carrying all around are putting fear in people. But we want to tell them that they shouldn't listen to those journalists that are carrying misinformation. We as Liberians, we should sit peacefully and go and vote on October 10. Peacefully. Nothing will happen in this nation and we will remain peaceful as we are.
To the journalists that are working in the media, that there will be no arguments, no violence will take place. That's all I have as, let's say, journalists to extend the message to the candidates who are determined to be elected.
WADR's Moravia correspondent Daliton Popper with that report. It's now time for sports update. Let's join Sankule Janko.
Hello out there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Edwin Code Okraku has been re-elected as the president of Ghana Football Association after the elective congress on Thursday in Tamale. Okraku won a landslide victory after 117 of the total 120 delegates voted for him to extend his tenure as president. This is what Okraku had to say after his re-election.
In these bad times, we had our disagreements, but we believed in the vision of the leadership of our game. That's why today we have sent a clear and bold statement about our confidence in the leadership of our football. Thank you.
The road to the elective congress was tense, but the GFA president has called for unity among football stakeholders.
I call on all of us, just like I said in Kumasi, to come together, to stay together, because the leadership of your FA is ready to listen to the other man. We are ready, and we will listen to the other man. We will listen to discerning voices. The 4 years ahead of us is to allow all of us to accelerate our rate of development.
The new leadership will steer the day-to-day football affairs in Ghana for the next 4 years. Okrako led a normalization committee in 2019 after FIFA dissolved Kwasi Nyantakya-led association following a corruption scandal. He is believed to be very popular among football stakeholders, as demonstrated in the Thursday's election results. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of NewsLink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukidi and Mustafa Sek for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service, and stream live on WADR.org. I am Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.